All right, everybody, just another live webinar with the coach. Hopefully you will all be on board soon and we will get to topic at hand. So hopefully you'll all be able to see the topic at hand as soon as we get on board here. We got some interesting stuff to share with you. Just wait for you guys to get on board, give you a couple minutes, and we will get started. So hopefully everybody's getting set, and I'll just wait for my numbers. A little bit of a delay here, and hopefully everybody's ready to tune in to some more evidence of the viability and health of a carb-based diet. Boy, it's been a week of nonsense on my end, folks. The stuff that I'm hearing about all the time is starting to boggle my brain, actually. So this week, not once, not twice, not three, four different people this week from different areas of the world wrote me uh, confused and asking me about how their previous trainer/coaches wouldn't let them eat fruit because fruit was a no-no and going to make them fat. So um, just mind-bogglingly, devastatingly idiotic what is going on out there, and passing for knowledge, which is driving me absolutely insane. So we'll get to that another time, but just waiting for everyone to get on board here, and then I'm going to get to the subject at hand. Got all our usual participants, so let's just wait for these numbers to jump a bit, and hopefully, as you can see, the topic there, just more real-world support for the carb-based, starch-based diet. And a lot of the times we get too caught up in looking at research that appears in journals only. So it appears in, like last week, I used the Journal of Obesity Research and things like that. And we get very, very clinical. And we forget that there's more to research on diet, nutrition, psychology of diet. It has to be more well-rounded, and that's where people like anthropologists come in, and evolutionary biologists come in, and we're taking a page out of those books today in order to examine some more real-world support for the carb-based diet from an article that was originally in the BBC. But I'm going to get to that in a minute. So I like Andy's handle here, signing in under the hashtag I eat carbs. So we like that. So so we're going to get into that. More real world support for the carb-based, starch-based diet. And I think you're going to be surprised what it ends up telling you when we see that. So I'm just going to post the link for you now. Wrong one. Sorry. There we go. Wrong button there. This is the one I want to show right there. So this is the link where you can find what I'm going to be talking about here. And shout out again to Perry for organizing my slides for me, making me look better than I am. So let's get into it. And then, along the way, I'll pause and make some relative comments and things like that. And we'll get to the relevance of all that as we go. So very good article, well-written article, and I'm going to get to that, and we are going to explore this in greater detail. And it's an article about the Tsimane tribe, and I did a little appearance here, and I'm going to go through it all for you guys as we go along. So hopefully you'll be able to hang with me on this one, and then of course all your comments at the end. So hopefully you can see the screen and you can hear me well, and I'm going to get into it and then come back and check out all your starch of like that, starchivores unite. So very good, very good, very good. All right, I'm going to get to this, and hopefully you guys can see the screen and everything okay. And I'm going to go right through the article and talk about the relevance. So the Tsimane tribe, what the researchers found when they finally reached these people was healthiest hearts in the world. So when you see something like healthiest hearts in the world, then you want to check out what they do, how do they live, what is their lifestyle, and all those kind of things. So researchers, again, to quote the researchers here, the healthiest hearts in the world have been found in the Tsimane people in the forests of Bolivia. And the Tsimane also show no obesity, no overweight people. And I'm going to explain to you why all that is really, really important. So study initially in the Lancet. The Lancet is a very, very respected clinical journal, top of the line in terms of academic standards, et cetera, et cetera. So really important thing to keep in mind. And in the study, few of the Tsimane showed any signs of clogged arteries, even well into old age. And why this is important is because of the diet that they follow. So it's a true hunter and gatherer culture. And although none of the rest of the world, the developed world, can go back to being a hunter-gatherer farming existence, this is how they live. And there's lessons in this for everyone on every side of why they're so healthy in terms of heart health and everything else. So obviously, since you followed the topic at hand, then you know what I'm going to say on why they're so healthy. So very good study. And like I said, it takes us away from clinical settings and laboratory settings and gets into real people leading real lives, and that's very important as well. So 16,000 Tsimane, they hunt, they fish, and they farm on the Maniqui River in the Amazon rainforest and the Bolivian lowlands, similar to civilizations thousands of years ago. And this is important in terms of diet and health because there's a lot of misrepresentation in the nutrition world and fad diet world about how people ate and lived thousands of years ago. As we know, paleo, for instance, is built on a lie. So very, very important stuff to keep in mind here. So I'll keep looking at your comments as we go. And for the researchers to get there, it took the researchers multiple flights and even a long canoe journey. So this tribe is really, really isolated from the modern world, and they live and gives us a lot of information about nutritional development, evolution, things like that. So very, very important. Now, let's get to the crux of it here, because in the Tsimane diet, 17% of their diet comes from animal protein. They eat wild pig, tapir, capybara. Capybara are the world's largest rodents. They're like the size of dogs, small dogs. 7% of their protein comes from freshwater fish, including piranha and catfish. And most of the rest of their diet comes from starches. They eat rice, maize, of course, which is a form of corn, manic root, sweet potato. It's a lot like sweet potato, and plantains. And plantains are similar to bananas, but much more starchy. And the remainder of their diet comes from forage, fruits, and nuts. So it kind of breaks down like this. And this is really, really important stuff to look at. And all the low carb people, you want to be sending them out some shares right about now. If there are a lot of low carb idiots out there, then send them this stuff and they'll want to get on board. So here what we see is the breakdown of the food type of the diet that they eat. And what we see here in the gray, 72% of their diet comes from starch carbs, more or less, or the rice, the maize, and the plantains. So that's over 70% of a starch-based, carb-based diet. And again, representing the healthiest hearts in the world of any current living population. So what all this means, 72% of calories from carbohydrates compared with about 50% in the US. And that's with people in the US who eat normal diets, who consider themselves not on low carb diets. They eat about 14% of their calories from fat, the Tsimane tribe, compared with about 34% fat in the US. And the Tsimane also consume much less saturated fat. So only 14% of their calories from fat. Now, what's ironic here is in my day and age in bodybuilding, the low-fat diet was all the rage. And I competed and won several contests on low-fat diets where I tried to keep my carbs high and my fats about 10% or below. And the modern vogue trend, of course, is, oh my God, you have to have way more fats or you're going to die or you're going to get fat. Or what we see here is much less saturated fat. Saturated fat in the low carb world is becoming popular again. Oh, it's not as dangerous as you thought it was. Don't forget the Tsimane tribe here, healthiest hearts in the world, and they eat less saturated fat and they eat less overall fat, and they eat a whopping percent of their calories from carbohydrates. So hit your share button now and send it all out to all the keto people you want to bother. So both Americans and the Tsimanes have 14% of calories from protein, but the Tsimane consume more lean meats. And again, considering the less saturated fat, etc., so much for bacon and all these things that you see on these low carb options these days that are allowed that you can eat and all these other things. So I would eat bacon on a cheat day, but I would never call bacon a healthy food, and I would never ever consider it as part of a diet. And what we see in the Tsimane tribe is a lot of the same thing as well. So we see the very little saturated fat. The fats they get come from the fish that they eat, and that's very, very important as well. So what we also see now is in comparison to the U.S. diet. So here we see, look at the carbs, and this is our own graphs. I don't believe these are in the article, although they might be. 72%, again, the Tsimane tribe, 72% of their diet is from carbs, compared to 52% in the U.S. 14% of their diet, very low fat diet, compared to 34% in the U.S., with protein elements being about the same. So let me see if there's any comments there. That's not true. DJ is saying diabetic people can't eat much carbs. That's totally not true. That's totally untrue. I've had plenty of type 2 diabetics that I've coached, and we've got them off their medications on a carb-based diet. So that's totally not true, DJ. Again, faulty information, and there seems to be a ton of it out there. Like I said when I started this broadcast today, about people writing me about fruit now, fruit being a no-no. So yeah, let's continue on here, and I will come right back, see if there's any more comments there. So, but this is a good graph to take a look at in terms of percentages. Remember, healthiest hearts in the world. So much for carbs being to blame for all the modern ailments known to man. So what all this means, if you believe in the carbs insulin theory of weight gain, then this whole tribe should be very overweight and suffer many health problems. If you believe a low-fat diet leads to weight gain because then you're eating high carbs, then this tribe should be very overweight by that ridiculous credo as well. If you believe that high-fat diets and low carbs are the way to go, then there's no way to explain the health benefits, the healthy hearts that these people have, the lack of disease that this tribe has, the leanness that they have, and the lack of, like I said, the lack of disease. So again, you're going to stump the low carbers here, and that's very, very important. Now let's talk about, if 72% of their diet is from carbs, well, how fit are they? Not just how healthy, but how fit. So what we see here is they're way more physically active than regular people. So the men average about 17,000 steps per day. That's because they are true hunter-gatherers. They have to hunt and gather their food. Women average about 16,000 steps per day. And even the over 60, people from the Tsimane tribe who are over 60 get steps well over 15,000 steps per day. So you're active all through your lifespan. Now, this isn't about steps. It's about being real about your own current activity levels and how that is linked into how you eat, what you eat, all those kinds of things. Because this is about, also, when they studied this tribe, it's about the realities of lifestyle throughout a lifetime. But I don't want to mislead people here. This isn't about going out and buying a Fitbit now and watching how many steps you take. The researchers here, they're just trying to give a handle on measurement of the difference. So This is one of the things here. So one of the researchers quoted to say that these people achieve a remarkable dose of exercise, says Dr. Gregory Thomas, one of the researchers. It makes most people struggle to get near 10,000 steps with their Fitbit seem deeply insignificant. Again, it's not about the steps, but it's about the reality of exercise from a young age. Because don't forget, these people, this tribe, they are culturally induced from a young age to get a lot of exercise in because of the nature of the society they live in. So, but what I want to do is compare that to these modern infomercials that I'm seeing all the time that are on, every hour on TV. The latest being 14 minutes a day is all you need to transform your body. And another one I just saw was 10 minutes a day, of course, to transform your body. But what we see here is that these people are active on a much higher activity scale. So very, very important stuff there. So, and how healthy were their hearts? The scientists that went in and looked at these people looked for coronary artery calcium, or CAC, which is a sign of clogged up blood vessels and risk of heart attack. And the scientists CT scanned 705 of the Tsimane hearts. At the age of 45, almost no Tsimane had CAC levels in their arteries. All right. 25% Americans at age 45 do have high levels of CAC in their arteries at the same age. So once again, so much for the carb theory here, that carbs are going to lead to ill health and all these other things. By the time they reach age 75, 2/3 of the Tsimane are still CAC free. And by the time Americans reach the same age of 75, 80% of them have high CAC levels or coronary artery issues. So really, really important to mark not just that their hearts are healthy, but their hearts are holy crap healthy. And from my mind, that has a lot to do with being on a carb-based, starch-based diet. So really, really important. Again, I'm just going to set that back up again, that, the Tsimane on the carb-based, starch-based diet, really, really important stuff to know and consider. So, and again, this is going to refute the scientists who do clinical studies and support keto and all these things in clinical settings are going to have a hard time explaining all this. So this is why this is such a good study. So very, very important to consider here. And the researchers, again, how healthy are their hearts? Their CAC much lower than in every other population where such data has ever existed. So their hearts aren't just healthy, they're the top of the line standard by which healthy hearts are measured. The closest were Japanese women, and that's still a different ballpark altogether. So the closest in heart health was the Japanese female diets, and they were still substantially lower. Now, a word here, do a little bit of research on what's the Japanese women's health diet, and you'll find out things that I've been saying for years. If you look at the Japanese women's health diet and why they're so healthy, guess what? Breakfast is their largest meal of the day. None of this intermittent fasting, skipping breakfast crap. All right. They eat a large breakfast. And guess what? They eat rice at every meal. So starch at every meal. So also a carb-based, starch-based diet. And they're the second healthiest hearts in the world. So losing a lot of the evidential power here for low-carb diets, folks, the beyond clinical settings. And this is really, really important. I wish there was more people tuning in to hear this. So now the key lessons here, I think I got past that. The key lessons is one of the professors in the study said, we just need a more holistic approach to physical exercise than just the weekend. But I say we need a more holistic approach to an understanding of exercise and diet that goes beyond scientific nonsense. All right. The reason keto and all this stuff even gets legs under it is because of insane arguments taken to insane degrees. But when we study real cultures and how they survived, we see a different story that unfolds. We need to be more holistic about that. And are we really training for health, or are we really training just for cosmetic appearance? Now, there's no reason you can't do both. So that's very, very important as well. But it's lost on people, especially living in the Western world. So Dr. Thomas said it could be that to maintain health, we need to be exercising much more than we do. And that's also relevant because we need to set expectations 2 to 3 days per week for half an hour, or these infomercials of 14 minutes. It's not going to cut it. So this should be common sense out there right now. And I know people have busy lives and they're busy, busy, busy. And one of the reasons that these infomercials, the first thing they'll tell you is, you know, they'll tap into your busyness and they'll say, well, do you have 10 minutes? Do you have 14 minutes? And then they try to make that the minimum amount of time commitment, but it's not realistic. And that's important here because they're misrepresenting what's realistic and what isn't. So that's really, really important stuff as well. Let me see what comments came in. I got some good comments that I will post when I'm done here. So that's a good comment that just came in. So I'll take a look at that. So let's look at some other key lessons of the Tsimane tribe. Okay, one, they're very active. So we need to be more active and less sedentary. The modern world keeping us alive, but urbanization and specialization of the labor force can be new risk factors for an unhealthy heart. Also, urbanization and mechanization and the busyness of lives are sources of stress, and stress, of course, is going to compromise heart health as well. But we see something else here. The Tsimane eat close to nature, and that's something else that's lost here. How many steps from nature are you away in terms of what you're eating and how you're eating? So that's very important as well. The Tsimane also live in small communities. Their life is very social and they maintain a positive outlook. We've come a different way from that. It sounds like we lead very social lives, but social media isn't a social life. And I think people forget that as well. So, but let's look not just at the macro proportions of this diet. Now, imagine if someone goes on here now, what should my macros be? And you do a Google search, what should my macros be? You think any of them are going to come back saying 70% carbohydrate and under 15% fat? You'd be attacked by every diet, religion, tribe out there. And yet here's some real world numbers. It's not about macros. It's not about outside in nonsense. So we're not just looking at the macro proportions here of 72% of their diet comes from carbs and starchy carbs at that, but how that breaks down. And how that breaks down is they eat close to a source. So what that means is they eat at foods that have no added ingredients to them, which is different than how we eat in the modern world. If you order a pizza that comes to your door, well, think about all the components of that. It's got flour, it's got sauce, it's got cheese, then it's got your toppings. So Michael Pollan always said, aim for to no more than 4 ingredients on something that you eat. And what we see here in hunter-gatherer societies, they eat very close to nature. And that also has a huge effect on health, leanness, things like that. So that's very, very important as well. But this small communities where life is social with a positive outlook, I mean, that is something that's huge, right? So you've got to sort of keep that in mind. I'll just highlight that for you. As well. So very, very important there. And they live healthily and they stay lean and they use here's the other point, they use no outside in external measurements to do so. There's a big lesson here. This is a hunter-gatherer society that lives like people lived thousands of years ago. They have no electronics. They're not walking around with Fitbit on their wrist. They're not counting how many steps they take. They're not measuring how many calories they're doing. Someone's not whispering in their ear, oh my God, your macro carbs are way too high. You need to bring that down and you need to increase your fats. And they're not outside in led, they're inside out fed. And that's very, very important as well. So again, a little reality check. Something I've been preaching for years is learn to live, diet, train from the inside out and stop buying into machinations of outside in effects that outside in elements know your body better than your body knows itself. That's just ridiculous. So very, very important thing here. So, of course, I'm going to call this carb power, right? I mean, the first thing I'm going to say is, this is all about showing the benefits of carbs. And I'm just going to copy that and I'm going to put it in the notes for a second here so that you guys can benefit from seeing it. And because people, when they replay this, they need to see the benefits of carb power. So very, very important. So this is an excellent study with very unique findings. And again, to reiterate, the Tsimane tribe gets 72% of their energy from carbohydrates, mostly starches, mostly starches. Let me just say that again, mostly starches. All right. So the fact that they have the best indicator, this is a quote now, the fact that they have the best indicators of cardiovascular health ever reported is the exact opposite to many recent suggestions that carbohydrates are unhealthy. Boom, boom, chakalaka-laka. Okay, and that quote is from Dr. Gavin Sandercock, radiologist, reader in clinical physiology at the University of Essex. So there you go, folks. I mean, if that doesn't say it, again, you're going to have the people who want to defend a position try to argue something down from there. But you know what? That's so relevant. I want to do that again. So let me just highlight my boom. All right. The fact that they have the best indicators of cardiovascular health ever reported is the exact opposite to many recent suggestions that carbohydrates are unhealthy. Boom. All right. I don't get where people ever started thinking that eating cheese and bacon for breakfast and a cheeseburger without the bun for lunch, or sausage and whatever else, and mixing it all in a bowl, that somehow that's really, really healthy. There isn't very many academic textbooks, nutrition textbooks on the planet that tell you that that's very healthy. So again, they lead a healthy diet with an active life. And the researcher quote is, "This is a beautiful real life story which reaffirms what we all understand about preventing heart disease." What do we all understand at that level? What do cardiologists understand about preventing heart disease? Simply put, eating a healthy diet very low in saturated fat, boom again, and full of unprocessed products, not smoking and being active for lifelong, is associated with the lowest risk of having furring up of blood vessels. So much for the meat first diets, right? Low in saturated fat. All right. That's very, very important here in terms of overall cardiovascular health and prevention of all kinds of disease. So here we have a high starch carb based diet, very low in overall fat and low in saturated fat, and the healthiest hearts ever recorded. Now, here's also what's important here, because anthropologists and evolutionary biologists and archaeologists, all right, they have studied about human evolution and survival of the fittest. And it's not just survival of the fittest. It's really, that term should be survival of the most adaptable. And in my books, Beyond Metabolism and Understanding Metabolism, the books you see behind me, I talk a little bit about this. We share something like 98% DNA with chimpanzees, something like that. There's only a few things that separate us. And one of the things that separate us allowed us to survive as a species, survival of the most adaptable. And what that was the evolution of amylase. And for those of you who don't know, guess what amylase is and how it allowed our species to survive. The evolution of amylase in the human species, sapiens species, allowed for humans to be nomadic where chimpanzees cannot. So what allowed us to be nomadic allowed us to thrive. And you know what amylase is? It's an enzyme specifically digests carbohydrates. So in other words, human beings survived as a species because of an ability to digest carbohydrates, meaning carbohydrates is what sustains our species and always has. So that's a very, very important thing and a unique way of looking at it. But you can find evidence to that just by looking at evolutionary biology and anthropology. Now, remember, it was real anthropologists who disproved and debunked paleo. My book, Understanding Metabolism, you see here behind me, I have 2 chapters on the paleo myth in my book, Understanding Metabolism, that totally debunks paleo. It wasn't even an anthropologist who tried to label it a paleo diet. So anthropologists came around after the fact and said, well, we may not know anything about nutrition, but we know how people in the Paleolithic age ate, and it's not this way. So again, we see real academia come to the forefront and disprove gimmicks and vogue trends, and it's always been that way. So what we see down here is that a high carb diet, including starch, is the most sustainable, get lean, stay lean, healthiest diet strategy on the planet. And most human cultures survived and thrived because of starch being staples around the world in different forms. Rice in Asia, potatoes in Eastern Europe, whole grains in all through North and South America, maize in South America, meaning corn, etc., etc. So very, very important point. All right. Survival of our species was based on ability of being able to be omnivores, yes, but also to choose carbohydrate as a method of survival. So that's really, really important stuff. Also, controlled studies of diets in laboratories and self-reporting, these have limitations. This was real-world culture study in a culture that lives the way people lived thousands of years ago. And what we see is all this modern, trending, scientific mumbo-jumbo doesn't show in this culture of real world people and how they've lived. So if the carb theory was true, then they should have discovered this culture deep in the jungles where they found them, and they should have been dying young. They should have been riddled with heart disease and cancers and all these other things because of the carb theory. But what we see is it's just not true. So studies also that are short term fail to account for the 3 realms of time within which metabolism and health function: the immediate realm, the residual realm, and the cumulative realm. And I've been arguing about that forever, especially when it comes to stuff like keto, who tend to show their benefits up front disappear real quickly if you can maintain the study for long term. So the relevance here is that the Tsimane, they live out their whole lives on high carb diets, and the cumulative effects of this are important. It's not that they do this for 12 weeks or they do this for 3 months and allow people to study them. This is how they live out their lives from the time they are born, and that's important. And it tells a lot about human nutrition and metabolism. So high unprocessed carbs based diet and exercise make you healthy, fit, and lean, and keep you that way. And this is the advantage of studying real cultures in the real world, and also accounts for lifestyle variables. So this reveals the effect of long-term behaviors that are repeated over and over again, longer than most studies could ever possibly run. And studies like this also remove what's known as the Hawthorne effect. And that's when people change their behavior when they know they're being watched or they know they're being observed. If they know they're a part of a study and they're supposed to eat X, Y, or Z, they probably make a bigger effort to eat X, Y, or Z, knowing that they're being observed for doing so. So that effect has been studied in the research over and over again as well. So that's really, really important. Other references that you should consider reading is T. Colin Campbell's book, Whole, Rethinking the Science of Nutrition. T. Colin Campbell's only been a leader in nutrition research for over 50 years. I can't tell you how many academic articles and books he's penned. 50 years in academia of studying nutrition at the highest levels. And it's funny when I say this, I still get people writing trying to attack him, like trying to kill the messenger. When you've had 50 years experience at the top of an industry, then you can buy into critiques of these people. But this kind of stuff is just what makes me laugh in the modern era. People that have been around for all of 10 minutes feel qualified to criticize people that have been doing it for 50 years at a level that they'll never comprehend. These critics will never comprehend. They just ride the coattails of some other new age expert. So it's very frustrating when you're trying to help people who don't want to be helped, let me tell you. And then, of course, my own 2 books talk a lot about all this and why I'm in favor of carbohydrates. My Beyond Metabolism book here on the right as you can see, how your brain, biology, and the environment create and perpetuate weight issues and what you can do about it. Well, the study on the Tsimane tribe speaks a lot to that. It speaks about how biology and environment interact and how they create, perpetuate, or prevent weight issues. As we see here, a very high carb diet and unprocessed carbohydrates leads them to being lean for a lifetime, energetic for a lifetime, all right, and the healthiest hearts ever recorded in a lifetime. And the ones that came in second still eat high carb diet, starch based diet with rice at every meal and a big breakfast, which goes against the nonsense of intermittent fasting and everything else. I don't care if something's a vogue trend. That's where you get all these 10-minute people that have been around 10 minutes riding on coattails and jumping on bandwagons. I've seen it my whole career, and I've watched these trendists continue over and over again. And like I said, my other book, Understanding Metabolism, The Truth About Counting Calories, Sustainable Weight Loss, and Metabolic Damage, also speaks to this study on the Tsimane tribe. There is 2 chapters in Understanding Metabolism that's all about paleo being debunked, but there's more in there as well. There's the potato power chapter and talking about the sustainability of the starch-based, carb-based diet. So I wish people wanted to be more informed, but most people, they just want to be on the side of right. So unfortunately, in this day and age, when it comes to nutrition, people want to pick sides. So people treat diet like religion, and they want to take sides and instead of looking for the truth. So really, really important stuff. And now I'm going to get to your comments. So Ashley's just saying the China study proved the dangers of casein from dairy to turn on and off cancer cells. Yeah, there was a lot of, and there was a lot of hoopla about that as well. Very important info. Nancy's just saying that she loved the info. Thanks, Nancy. Appreciate you being on board. The numbers were really tiny today, folks. I don't know if why that is. They were really, really big last week. So maybe people just aren't that interested in subjects that they claim to be interested in. So yeah, so Perry's just posting some of the quotes that I've used here. So here's a quote from the researchers. The fact that the Tsimane have the best indicators of cardiovascular health ever reported is the exact opposite to many recent suggestions that carbohydrates are unhealthy. Was that not showing on the slide there, Perry? I hope it was showing because, yeah, so it's very important. So, and then Ash is just saying, the truth never goes away. Fads come and go. But that's the problem, Ashley. Everyone thinks that their generation is smarter than every generation before them. And what they're doing isn't a fad. What they're doing is the real thing. And everyone that came before them, they were the ones who were stupid and following fads. But they really got it down. And it's that kind of vogue arrogance, I call it, where everyone thinks that the new way is the best way and everyone else before that was something we could laugh at. And meanwhile, the same thing goes over and over again. So it's like that old saying, Shakespeare saying, or was it Shakespeare? I can't remember, but the wise man knows himself to be a clown. The clown thinks of himself as a wise man. And it's especially relevant, like I said, amongst consumers where they don't know how to read academic studies. They don't know how to differentiate. They don't know how to create a foundation or a methodology. So they bounce around and they join tribes. So if you're a keto tribal person, then you sign up for keto and defend it to the death, and then all this other kind of nonsense that goes with that. So Hannah's just saying, how many hours of exercise per day do you feel is necessary based on your comment that you mentioned? Well, it's what people can afford, Hannah. It's not so much what I think is necessary. It's people's unrealistic expectations of outcomes. I got people who write me and they want to sign up and they want to train at home with no equipment. They basically have like a set of 10-pound dumbbells and a couple things of tubing, and they want to train twice a week, and they want to look like Andy, or they want to look like Krista. It's just, it's not so much if you don't have the time, you don't have the time, but at least adjust your expectations to make them realistic. If these things were possible to train a couple days a week for an hour, then everyone would look the way they want to look. There wouldn't be any challenge to it. Everyone would be walking around thin, lean, sculpted, whatever. So Now, having said that, I've always trained 5 or 6 days a week. Sometimes I'll slow it down to 4, and then I'll take time off when I want to fatten up or things like that. So, yeah, so it's very, very, it's subjective because some people really don't have the time. And then my job is to tell them, okay, well, let's be realistic about what you can accomplish. You're not going to be getting, oh, I don't want to ever compete, but I want to look like I could. Well, you're not going to do that on 2 or 3 days a week of training. You're just not. If there was a way to do that, I would have discovered it because I'm a pretty smart cookie and I've devoted myself to this industry for 4 decades. So again, people would rather read the headlines. They'd rather buy the sizzle than know the steak. So they'd rather buy the promise than experience the outcome. And that's, that's too bad. So, but that's the truth. So Andy's just saying most human beings probably don't walk 17,000 steps in a week because our lifestyles have changed so much. And I talk about this also in my book, Understanding Metabolism. I talk about that. I talk about how the research shows when the obesity epidemic started and took off was with the advent of fast food on every corner, but not just fast food, but as technology advanced, the labor involved, physical labor in daily chores was less and less and less and less. We got TV remotes, we got washing machines, dishwasher machines. Everything took the physicality out of day-to-day chores in terms of how we did them. And even now, there's research that people don't even clean their own houses anymore, right? So they hire housekeepers to do more physical labor. And as we burn less and less calories in day-to-day activities, we also began eating more around 1970 as well, something like 700 calories more per day. So you can see how that adds up more and more all the time. So that's really, really important. And then my book, Beyond Metabolism, just talks all about how our brains evolved to want things like sugar and hyper palatable foods. So these things are very important, and how eating in a regimented way and exercising in a regimented way are some of the best things you can do to help control weight. If you're all over the place with sleep patterns and eating patterns, then there's going to be a metabolic price to pay for that. So people are asking me a lot lately about optimizing metabolism. Well, these are the simple ways that you do it. And then Jason had a good comment. I get that low carb and intermittent fasting work because of a calorie deficit they create. Well, I wouldn't even say work. That's a tentative word for me because don't forget the realms of time there, Jason. In the short term, anything works. But what about the residual period and the cumulative period? Is there no truth to cutting carbs to reduce insulin and make it easier to stick to a weight loss diet? Well, I just went through that with the Tsimane tribe. If insulin was an issue and these people are eating 72% of their daily energy from carbs, then they would be fat. They would all be overweight. They would all have problems to do with hyperinsulinemia, and they don't. They're insulin sensitive. So no. I mean, it just doesn't get through to people that it's not about cutting carbs. This is just the modern Vogue trend to jump on. And now we got these idiots talking about metabolic repair and all this stuff who are not only going intermittent fasting, but they're going keto while they're doing it. And talk about setting yourself up for long-term metabolic damage. Well, I want to see where those people are who are all, yay, you go, girl, and, cheerleading this nonsense. I want to see where they're at in a year. Believe me, a lot of them will be writing me saying, can you fix it? And that's the other thing, too, telling people that anything they do to their metabolism is fixable. Well, if you drive your car off a cliff and even though you got your seatbelt on and the door's closed, it's probably not going to be fixable by the time it hits the ground. So we also need to stop making those kind of promises to people as well. It makes me sick. Does it make any difference if the starches have fiber? Yeah, sure. But it's here we go again. People want to take things down to one actual food and microanalyze it to death. I did a post on Instagram today about fruit, and one of the first comments was, well, this fruit has a lower glycemic index than that fruit and has more fiber. None of that stuff matters. It's the overall, what you're going to get at the end of the week. How did my diet look? The other comment was, well, shouldn't there be protein with all that fruit? It's like, again, people want to microanalyze food to food, meal to meal. And what we see in a tribe like this, who doesn't microanalyze anything from the outside in, are healthier than you and I and everyone listening to this. So I can tell people inside out over and over again, and it doesn't connect, because that's how much you've absorbed this. So James is just asking, can I post the Tsimane pie and graph chart to download? It'll probably be on the podcast, James, probably. So, yep. So some people are lucky enough to be checking in from Cancun. So, and then Renee George is just saying he's a diabetic vegan, so his sugar levels have been fine for months. So there you go again. So much for one of those comments that was early on, that diabetic people can't eat carbs or can't eat a whole lot of carbs. That's just a myth that's been debunked over and over again. So I can't express that enough. So. And Lawrence just looks like he's on a bit of a rant here, and since it's a suitable rant, it's insane how people know so little about human physiology, because our body needs carbs, glycogen for brain function, energy production. Low carb diets are more like diuretic diet, of course, that causes the body to excrete water. The only time keto is logical for people who are sick. Of course. That's the generalization. But it's amazing how these things spread into, pop culture nonsense. So, and I love Ashley's comment here, starchivores. I don't think I've heard that before. So, starchivores is awesome. So, and Rick Baldino is I eat carbs too. We should start a hashtag, folks. I eat carbs, or we eat carbs, or I eat carbs too. I think that would be pretty cool, and we should start spreading that around, and have people head back to my YouTube channel, or my books, or this page, or whatever. So, and Ange was just saying, people look at how much fruit she eats and say that's way too much sugar, you'll get fat. And here's the thing, I had so many people write me this week. There must be some new coach in town who's doing well, or has good, advertising or something. But a few people writing me how they're this past coach. There must be some meme going on online about fruit, and how their past coach of fruit was a no-no because they were going to get bloated and they were going to hurt their metabolism, like keywords, like buzzwords, like hurt your metabolism or get fat or all these other things. Really, from a plant, from nature. It just boggles my mind out there what's passing for knowledge these days. So, and then on another note, folks, I gotta say I'm pretty disappointed with the numbers today. So maybe I'll try a new time next time, because I don't do this for the good of my health. So hopefully the numbers will go up. Hopefully you people are spreading the word. But someone alerted me last week after the fact, after my webinar went off. And I'll tell you, I will always allow people who disagree with me to make comments, and sometime I'll post them if they're relevant, or, sometime even if they're not relevant, if I can just disprove them. But what I won't do is I won't allow two things. I won't allow personal attacks, and that's not what happened last week. But someone alerted me last week that there was a wolf in sheep's clothing on here that was trying to play subtleties about some of my arguments, and lo and behold, searched them down, and they're multi-level marketers of complete nonsense. So I deleted and banned that person, because I'm not even going to expose people to stuff that I know is a scam. And I'm not going to say let them decide for themselves, because most people don't have the tools to decide for themselves. So there was a person on here, being very nice and being very affable, and just, little nudges here and there about differences. And then someone checked them out after the fact and sent me the links, and it was complete and utter nonsense that they're advocating and trying to steer people to multi-level marketing of a useless supplement. That's all about what to do. A supplement that you take if you've eaten too many carbs, which I don't know. When you've been around for 4 decades and think you've heard everything, and then you hear this stuff, and that people actually not only buy into it, but literally buy it and believe it. So I don't know. Now, I guess we're going to have the cure for the carb hangover, and that'll be it. But we should talk to Andy about that one. He'd be the expert on that. So, but that's it, folks. That's the Tsimane tribe. I'm going to put that back up on the screen and shrink my big fat noggin so you guys can see it. And yeah, I'll take that back, and then let's just take that all the way to the top. So that's the article on the Tsimane tribe. Again, the healthiest hearts in the world, and lean, and they just happen to eat 72% of their diet from carbs, mostly starch-based carbs. And a distant second, Japanese women who also, if you look at their eating, their breakfast is their biggest meal, and they eat rice with every meal throughout the day. So there you go. And of course, people will come on and have something to say about this, but very, very important. So I hope, I'm glad that you guys that did come out. And hopefully that these numbers will get up. If they're not, I'm not going to keep doing this, because I'm not doing this for myself. So hopefully in the following weeks you hit the share button, and we'll get to some stuff. And yeah, so I'll just leave that with Ashley's comment. Her starchivore ways have vastly improved her health and fitness recovery. And that's another thing, folks. I'm so tired of hot bodies who live terrible lives. They're so thirsty for validation of how hot their bodies are. They don't tell anyone that their lives are completely miserable. They treat their loved ones like crap. They have no energy to get through the day. They're irritable as hell because they can't be around food. And then in the gym, they paint on a happy face that life is so great. And then I did a post on Facebook this morning about some of this stuff that, the competitors hide behind. And lo and behold, one of those synchronicity moments, I was visiting with someone today who brought up that she just happened to was asking about a different gym that I go to, and I don't know any of the competitors anymore, but apparently there was a local nice guy, I guess, young guy, young 30s with a daughter, competitor guy, nice to everybody, apparently by all accounts. And like so many these days, the news is that committed suicide and left behind a daughter. So, a lot of these things are directly associated with that competitor lifestyle, because eventually you're not in your 20s anymore. You get in your 30s, you have to earn a living, make a living. You don't want to give up your bodybuilding identity. And it's sad, but it's becoming something I'm hearing all the time. And we become desensitized to something so pathetic, I think, is a dangerous thing. So, yeah. Anyway, folks, that's it for me this week. Hopefully next week the numbers are up, or I'm just going to, just do Facebook posts because I don't need this. So, yeah, hopefully you guys will tune in, and I'll have some good ones coming up. I got another great transformation inspiration coming up in the future weeks as well. So, hopefully that gets out there. And if anyone missed this, then by all means, you guys, you can feel free to share and send people to the YouTube channel or whatever. So yeah, so all good. So James saying don't give up. I don't know how to give up, James. It's not in my DNA to give up. What I'm saying is I just won't keep showing up for no reason. So that's the important thing. It's not about giving up. I don't have that in my DNA. So for sure. All right, guys, I will see you all next week. So hopefully you all learned something, and by all means spread the word. And I eat carbs. That's our hashtag. We eat carbs. Send them to scottabelfitness.com and the real Andy Sinclair, and booyah. All right, the starch-based diet rules. See you next week, folks.